Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, the show where brilliant professionals share how to sharpen the universal skills required to flourish at work. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money with your host, Pete Makaitis.
Hello, and thanks so much for joining us here for episode 205 with Craig Ross. Craig has done a lot of very clear, sharp thinking and categorizing and delineating for what it takes to do big things. So you'll learn 1, the 3 decisions required in order to do big things. 2, the 3 enemies of fulfillment. And 3, how to guide the energy of your team toward achieving big things. So if you'd like to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we reference here, it's at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP205. That's the letters EP and then the numbers 205. And while at awesomeatyourjob.com, I encourage you to investigate some of our handy resources. One I'd point you to right now is simply the Gold Nugget email list. So if you listen to the show and you at times think, oh, that's brilliant, I should write that down, but you can't put the pen to paper because you're driving or you're exercising and just not able to do so, we take those notes for you. We send them to your inbox each morning that we have a new guest. And so you can sign up right at awesomeatyourjob.com to get those, or do it right from your smartphone right now, safely, of course, if you are driving. Wait till you stop. By texting NUG, that's N-U-G, to the number 444-999. You text NUG to 3 4s and 3 9s, and you sign up that way. Now, here is Craig's story. Craig W. Ross is a facilitator, coach, author, speaker, and CEO of Verus Global. For 20 years, Craig has partnered with C-suite executives and leadership teams across numerous industries and global organizations such as Procter & Gamble, Alcon, Oceaneering, Cigna, Nestle, Universal, Ford, and other Fortune 100 companies. Combining a passion for uniting people and a conviction that organizations achieve extraordinary things through teams, Craig delivers practical and real-world expertise to those he serves. Here's Craig. Craig, thanks so much for joining us here on the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
Pleasure joining you, Pete. Thank you.
Well, I learned a little bit about you, that you have a fondness for hiking. I'd love to hear if you had any interesting, exciting, stories or encounters, I don't know, bears or death-defying moments or just hilarity when in the outdoors.
You're striking to my passion. So love the outdoors and have been on the rivers lately of the Western United States and had the opportunity to get through what are called Class 4 rapids, which if you're not careful, will flip your boat. And so I'm happy to report I and the team came back in one piece with a dry boat. In other words, we didn't flip. So good fun for sure.
Oh, that's great to hear. Great to hear. And those are some of my favorite times when you just get to escape from the screens and the buzzes and the notifications for a couple of days. So I resonate right with you there. And it's often a place where big ideas come about. And could you share some of the big ideas behind your company, Verus Global, and then the book you co-authored, Do Big Things?
You got it. Verus Global, having been around for 25 years, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of leaders and teams. And over the years, we've found that they're coming to us with increasingly the stress and pressures in their search for how do we equip ourselves to think and act in ways where we can accomplish these extraordinary objectives. So that's our area of expertise, is bringing both through trainings, our consulting, advising, as well as the coaching that we do in terms of equipping their leaders to move more effectively in a way that delivers the results, but also, and this is where I love your work, Pete, in a way that is also fulfilling and inspiring for those who are doing the work. That combination really does create an epic impact.
Cool. Well, so tell me then, when you talk about epic impact or doing big things, I mean, that sounds just intrinsically exciting and energizing for me, but could you maybe unpack it for others, or if there's any research insights you have into, why is doing big things important in the first place?
That's an important question, because oftentimes I think people hear the term do big things, and as wonderful and as perfect as it is, I can think of an organization we're working with now in Texas, as I was supporting the team there. Their big thing, quite frankly, was just to break even, to hit their targets. And we're talking about market share at this point. And so, from the outside, we could look at that and say, that's not a very big. But when you think about that, they'd been losing market share for the last 3 years in a row consistently. They knew that they had to shift. They had to approach the barriers in their thinking and actions so they could actually kind of, plug that dam, stop the bleeding, as some people say, regroup, and then express their greatness in the ways that they knew they could. And so that's a really important question as it relates to what is technically a do big things. I would add to that, Pete, as well. Oftentimes I find that we do partner and attract leaders who have a vision for greatness, and greatness includes mankind. It includes the human component. They're unwilling to deliver stellar business results without ensuring that the people doing the work are also fulfilled and inspired. So that's what our work is. That's who our work is for.
Okay, so I dig it. Well, then tell us, what are some of the key ingredients or steps that teams need to fulfill in order to achieve some of these big things?
You're on it. And you actually use a perfect word, ingredients. Unequivocally, as we've studied teams that do big things, we find that they actually already possess the ingredients. What they're looking for is the recipe. And Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what's out there available, really, really solid work, solid material, but it generally focuses on the trust. We need to trust each other. It focuses on collaboration. It focuses on alignment. In other words, the what. And I'm going to sound like a little bit of a heretic here, and so I want to be careful. Yet, what would happen if we didn't make trust the focus, but instead focused on what causes trust to occur? And that's what the 7 steps within the Do Big Things framework, which we build and deliver in everything we do, equips leaders and teams to do in their work. It brings the ingredients together in a recipe that's practical and, quite frankly, intuitive based. In other words, they can do it quickly and in a sustained fashion.
Well, that sounds great. So causes of trust. I mean, I'd love it if you could unpack that a little bit there. I guess, I've got a couple things that are coming to mind, but I'm sure you got more. So lay it on us.
You got it. I'm thinking about a leader just speaking with this is probably a week and a half ago. I'm going to go ahead and call her Michelle just for a placeholder. So I'm having this discussion with Michelle, and she's in the software industry. Incredibly knowledgeable. And, as we're talking, she's using all the typical jargon. She's talking, with typical high-performing team sort of stuff. But then as we're speaking, her voice cracks a little bit, Pete. And I unwrap that a little bit more through questions. Turns out that Michelle's working up to 70, 80 hours a week. I'm not joking. Now, and here's the scoop. And then in the course of the discussion, she says, and I do not, when I asked her, do you have confidence you're going to hit your targets? She actually said, with a short pause, no.
Okay.
Then we go on to find out the reality of the situation for Michelle. She's then going home and giving her family her leftovers.
Right.
And this just doesn't work. And so one of the steps that was really important to Michelle, and as they're now in the process of equipping themselves to think and act in ways to deliver on their targets, the step that resonated most for her was what we call the Do Big Things decisions. 3 very specific decisions that, if you'd like, I can unpack in examples. As she's making those decisions, she's showing up different as a teammate, and therefore the team is performing at a higher level.
Well, yes, let's hear the decisions.
You got it. First decision is what we call the contributor decision. And it's founded in the belief, Pete, that we don't necessarily, in fact, I'm going to be bold here. I believe in our industry, we're actually wasting time and resources by trying to teach Michelle and professionals what trust is.
Okay.
Michelle already knows what trust is. She actually already knows how to be trustworthy and trustful. And so the contributor decision is Michelle making the decision to do this. I choose to bring my best to the situation.
All right.
Number 2, the second decision is what we call the activator decision. This is Michelle's favorite. The activator decision is this. I choose to bring out the best in the person I'm interacting with. Now, here's a really cool thing, because Michelle, when you talk to her about what she does in her free time, on weekends, she's volunteering. She's very mission-oriented. So on her holidays, she actually goes to other parts of the world, and she's giving of herself to activate humanity. And to hear Michelle describe it, she says, this decision enables me to bring out and act on my purpose more effectively in the workplace.
All right.
And Pete, you and I know what happens as soon as Michelle makes that activator decision, then other people start making the contributor decision.
Certainly.
Third one then, and this one's pretty big to Michelle's boss. I happen to know who that is as well. The third decision is what we call the connector decision. And that is where now Michelle and her teammates are making the contributor decision. They're making the activator decision. Now together they make the connector, and that is this. We choose to partner across the enterprise to deliver on our shared objectives. This is the silo breaker. This is the enterprise thinking decision. And this is where, of course, she and her teammates begin to rebrand her function as it relates to how they're perceived within their organization.
Okay. Well, so there's 3 key decisions there, and each of them starts with, I choose or we choose. And so I guess in practice, when you make the decision, when you make that choice, what are you doing? Is it just sort of a sentence in your head or that you say out loud? Or what is the thing that you're doing when you make it? Because I guess in some ways it seems like, well, yeah, we should probably just kind of do that all the time. But maybe what you're driving at is we don't think of these as conscientious decisions.
You got it. I mean, I'm going to give you a perfect example and a tool that your listeners can take with them right now. I want to set it up with some research. This is out of the University of Houston. And there's a ton of other studies on this that reinforces this. But right now, 57% of the workforce is not bringing their best. Mm-hmm. We already know about the engagement scores and where that's at. They're quite low. But literally half of the team members on each team are not making the contributor decision. And so we can make this just 10% more. So to your point, how do we do that? One of the other steps in the Do Big Things framework is what we call energize around a shared reality. And a primary tool that we equip teams with, and I'd like to give your listeners this tool right now, is what we call the energy map.
All right.
The energy map, I'm going to make this really straightforward so we can visualize it right now. The energy map has 3 parts to it. It has a backside, a neutral part, and a front side. And what's happening, what we've discovered, and this is built on Peter Senge's work and his research, and along with Daniel Goleman and others, is that when teams can function from a greater shared reality, they're able to function more effectively together. And so Michelle and her team on the backside, now when they choose to talk about their frustrations, what they're afraid of having happen in the business, that's a focus that will take our energy actually further away from our solutions.
All right.
Most teams don't comprehend that. Sometimes that's necessary to do because as human beings, we have those emotions. And unless we're able to bring that forward, it's going to stop us in the future. The second part is the neutral part, and this is where Shakespeare comes into play. Shakespeare said, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And so information is inherently neutral. This is where the data falls. This is where information falls, right in the middle of this energy map. And now Michelle is making the contributor decision. She can say, hey, I want to better understand the challenge we're facing. So she's seeking information in the middle of the energy map, and she's setting people up for success instead of asking that age-old question, hey, I want to know what the problem here is and why this happened, which is going to take energy backwards.
So let's cover that distinction a little bit. So it's not so much, why is this problem happening, but you're getting an understanding of something slightly different there.
You got it. I mean, Einstein said it himself, right? The issue, I paraphrase, of course, the issue is that all too often individuals and teams are trying to solve problems that they haven't really identified what the true problem is. And so this is where Michelle gets a chance to be her best self, make that contributor decision by saying, time out. Let's actually understand our issue even more. And she's doing it in a neutral way so other people don't have to get defensive.
Oh, okay. So you're saying it's not so much like the why, which can sort of get you into a sort of a blame game, finger pointing scenario, but more of let's just kind of dig in and understand and learn sort of what's behind this. So I guess it's a little bit tricky. I think you'd fall into getting into more of the back place as opposed to the neutral place while you dig into that. So any pro tips on how you pose the questions or facilitate those conversations?
You got it. And you're speaking to something that's really critical. So the 3 enemies of fulfillment for a team, teams that do small things actually succumb to the 3 enemies. And they're 3. So it's distracted, they're hopelessly stressed, and they're disconnected. from what matters most. And at least at the heart of that is our values. And so I'll give an example. So we're working with a client that it was in a joint venture. This is actually down in Florida. And this particular leader wasn't a leader on this team, this collaborative cross-functional team. They're just a member of the team, and they knew this energy map that we're talking about. And so what this person did is they started with what we call a backward focused question. So in the very beginning, they said, what's the frustration that our customers are experiencing right now? And others strategically taking focus on the backside energetically. And of course, there's 100 people that wanted to speak up in that meeting. Well, this is it, this is it, this is it. And then this person very strategically went to the middle part of the energy map by saying, all right, so what do we fully need to understand here? This is a neutral question. What do we need to understand before we solve this issue?
All right.
And that's really key. And notice that it wasn't about, I want to understand the problem, because there's people in the room on this person's team who think that the problem is the person sitting next to them. It's a person on the screen across the ocean. That person's the problem. But what we want to accomplish with the energy map is ensuring that we're not positioning people as the problem, but the issue.
Got it.
And then, of course, that third part of the energy map, this teammate asked the forward-focused question by then saying, all right, how do we solve to this? How do we move this issue forward?
Okay, understood. Well, so now with regard to the back side of the energy map, I mean, it seems like you're suggesting we not spend much time there. And so I want to get clear, though, to what extent does that have a place, or should we just move on?
You know what, Pete? Your question is so important, and here's why. This is not an approach to being positive or negative. This is an approach to delivering more positive outcomes.
All right.
And so the technical answer to your question is we spend as much time on the backside of the energy map that the business requires us to. And all too often, teams that are doing small things, that means they're not delivering on their objectives, are spending way too much time. The business is asking them to move forward, and they're stuck in focusing on problems.
Okay, understood. So you're saying that we should cover the bases and as much as is required. And so maybe could you orient us a little bit, sort of how much is too much and how much is just enough?
Yeah, again, so there's a component. When we talk about epic impact, what an epic impact means is that we're delivering phenomenal performance. We're delivering on the objective we have in front of us, and we're doing it in a way where the people doing the work are fulfilled and inspired. That combination is important. And so the answer, and generally speaking, I'm going to give you from our 25 years of experience, we're going to find that in a typical meeting, those teams that are doing big things, they're delivering high performance, are spending, 5 to 10% of their time on the backside of the energy map. They're doing that, though, strategically. They're doing it early in their meetings and discussions. They're spending another 35 to 45% of time in the middle of the energy map. That means there's neutral emotions. People are passionate about outcomes, but they're neutral as it relates to the energy that they're bringing to it. And that's really, really key. And then they're spending the remaining time on the forward-focused part. And why this is key is because unless we care about each other as teammates, we can't deliver on the business. And what happens is if we're spending too much time on the backside of the energy map, it actually drives wedges between us as people. And if we know that people care less about each other, and that's the corrosion, that's what breaks teams down, they can't perform.
Okay, understood. Well, now I want to hear a little bit about the things that are holding us back, when it comes to being distracted and stressed and disconnected. What are some of your go-to prescriptions for addressing some of these?
So one of the things that's really key to this methodology and why it works so well is those three enemies of fulfillment that break down productivity. So that distractedness that you talked about, the hopelessly stressed, and of course being disconnected is oftentimes because teams have not mobilized their hearts and their minds. Changing our behaviors is not an intellectual exercise. It is the business of the heart. And we have younger generations coming up now in the workforce that they're actually adamant and non-negotiable in the fact that they want to be their best selves And we also have older generations that are tired of course, transactional workplaces, just checking the box. In other words, people want to ensure there's more meaning in their work. So the answer to that question, Pete, is ensuring that we're actually leveraging that. One of the things that we found is most effective in leveraging that is not rah-rah speeches. It's not just the leader of the team modeling, but it's every person on the team asking different questions. And by that, I mean questions that go beyond the boilerplate execution questions, such as, what do we need to do next? What's on the agenda? What is the customer asking for? Teams that are really performing at high levels are actually, team members are bringing the elevated questions such as, why is achieving this outcome important to us as individuals? What does success look like for us as teammates, not just from a business standpoint, but for us personally?
All right.
If you'd like, another third question is, when you think about our purpose as a team, how is that consistent with our purpose as people?
Yeah, those are bigger questions for sure.
And because they're bigger questions, oftentimes they're not asked because a lot of cultures in companies don't have, that's not natural. But I would submit, and our research supports the fact that human beings have this in them, and it takes the courage of one or two team members just to begin that sort of thought process.
Okay, so I like that. And I want to hear a little bit about that notion of, if you're not the leader, manager, director, VP, CEO, and whatnot, how do you envision sort of the role of the individual contributor showing up in terms of asking these questions? So it sounds like you're saying, hey, anyone can and should ask them, and that's great. What else?
There are three things that people can do in those situations. Number one, if I'm on a team and I work for a leader who has high sense of confidence, self-assured, high self-esteem, if you will, you could add emotionally intelligent. We can, in the middle of a meeting, we can give the leader credit if that's necessary and say, you just reminded me of something that I think might be important for us to discuss. And then I can ask that higher level question. That's one method.
All right.
Second method, if I work for a leader who might be insecure, and I'm a leader of a team and there are moments when I'm insecure. And so my team will actually come up to me offline, one-on-one, and first of all, acknowledge that I'm doing my best, acknowledge that I'm really trying, and then offer. So here's something I found effective in other situations. Here's a question that I believe our team is eager to answer. Third approach is to find when the leader is actually asking these higher level questions or is close to it, and then give the leader the feedback. And it could be as simple as this. At the end of the day, I send them a quick text and simply say, hey, that question you asked right when we were walking out of the room, that rocked. It's so cool when you ask us those questions. Thank you. Here's the difference it made for me.
Okay, I dig it. So a large part of this is all about the questions that you're posing. Are there any other sort of key actions that we should take to take advantage of this do big things insights?
Yeah, really critical. I was working with, he's a dear friend of mine, actually. I'll call him Mike because that's his name. He's a former astronaut, was on 4 different shuttle missions, captain of 2 of them, just an amazing man. And he and I we were having a discussion one time, and it was kind of an intimate moment, Pete. And I asked him, I said, come on, you're flying in space. Weren't you ever nervous? Weren't you ever, scared? Come on, tell me the truth.
Right.
And point blank, he looks at me and says, no. And the reason why is because I trusted the process. I said, Craig, we always had a process. Anything that could happen, we had a process. We backed up, Pete, and we looked at it, and the teams that are doing big things, and not just the teams, but the people on teams that handle any situation, they know the thinking and actions that they're going to default to.
All right.
And so I would submit to your listeners, in identifying the stressful situations, have you articulated the specific type of thinking and actions that you want to model in those situations? That's key.
All right. So you're saying that in advance, you've covered, hey, if this goes down, what do we do?
Precisely. I'm thinking about a leader. This is in R&D space within the medical device company. A team member. So not the leader of the team. This is really important. And he found himself every single time he was not just presenting to senior leaders, but anytime there was a senior leader in the room, this guy started falling apart. All his brilliance couldn't get out of his mouth. And so we kind of unpacked that. And of course, in the spirit of making a longer story short, ultimately landed on what's the thinking and the actions. And for him, it was what's going to be his focus. And quite frankly, the answer was he realized that when he was focusing on himself, he got nervous. When he was focusing on bringing value, his brilliance shined. And so that was his thinking, is I'm going to think and focus on being of service to others. And he got the breakthrough he needed.
Okay, that's great. Well, so I also want to hear you mention a concept called the human imperative. What do you mean by that, and how do we make it work for us?
Yeah, I love to ask teams. They're always so passionate. All of us are, aren't we? We're passionate about our delivering on our objectives. And I love to ask teams, do you care enough about delivering excellence in your objective to care more about each other? There's a bit of an epidemic taking place right now, Pete, in the sense that there's such emphasis on being customer-centric, which is a beautiful thing. And, to design with the customer in mind, it's really important work. Yet we're seeing organizations and teams specifically that care more about the customer than they actually do each other as teammates.
I see.
And in some cases, they care more about the customer than they do themselves. And they're putting in 70 hours a week bleeding for the customer. And guess what? The customer might be happy. That person's going home to broken families and broken careers. That stuff's got to stop. And so the human imperative, the heart of it is caring. And the human imperative means in everything we're going to do, I'm going to model caring about myself, caring about my teammates, and caring about those that we serve as a team. And it's fundamental to any team that wants to do anything significant.
Okay, understood. And when it comes to doing the caring, could you share in practice, what are some key steps, simple things folks can do to care more?
You got it. So the HR teams, the organizational development, the OE folks, they're doing really important work. They likely have identified for all of us, and most organizations, if they've done basic work and good work, they've identified their values as a company. So that's great. What we encourage teams then to do is say, okay, those are our values. What does that look like in action for us as it relates to our current objective? This is really, really key, because as objectives change, how we express our values must also change. The values don't change, but how we express them must, if we're going to not just keep pace with the market, but deliver ahead. And so that's a step and an important question that every team should be discussing.
And could you share a couple examples of how you have one consistent value that gets expressed differently across different projects or initiatives?
Yeah, you got it. So let's talk about a company we work with. This was a big one for them, alignment. So alignment was one of their values. And as they addressed that example of, okay, so what does alignment look like for us with the objective we have that we're facing? And with that, it was, again, a medical device that they wanted to deliver to the market. What they discovered, Pete, in their discussion is that they were interpreting alignment as agreement.
I see.
That, hey, we all agree. And they realized, wait a minute, if we're going to spend time trying to agree, we're going to be way too slow. We're never going to deliver on this objective. So it was through the course of that discussion that they unpacked their value and said, in this particular case, alignment simply means that we're aligned on what has to happen by, when, and why. I don't necessarily have to be in agreement, but I have to be in support. I've got to be all in. And of course, that team went on to blow it out of the water.
Okay, that's great. So in that particular instance, it doesn't mean that every person personally feels, yes, this is the optimal way forward, but rather that they're just on board like, okay, this is what we're doing and I fit into that.
Yeah. So here's another example. Let's use the common value that most organizations have is trust. Right? And this is where I can sound a little bit like a heretic, because no one's suggesting that we don't trust each other, but it's getting below that at the cause. This particular organization, this is actually in Germany. So we're talking about, we had, I'm going to say, at least 5 other countries, so different cultural approaches within this session in Germany. And we're talking about trust. And as we again, asked that question, the question came up on why do we have the need then to see and inspect everybody's work as it relates to delivering on our milestones. So they were approaching their gates and their deliverables and their projects. And there was this compelling need as it was related, how they were defining trust up to that point is that there was an inspection of work done. Well, this team, now we can all go and see what the corporation says about trust, but until we have that discussion, and this team said, actually, trust means we meet certain principles that we've agreed upon in advance as it relates to our project work, and then we're free to deliver. We come to the table with the expectation that everybody's done their work. There's no need for all this extra work that was in place. Huge, huge breakthrough for that particular team.
Oh, that does sound like a huge breakthrough. And then I guess that just makes it all the more real. It's like, oh, maybe we don't trust each other, because maybe the work I see from you has a lot of edits, and revisions that need to occur before it's really kind of ready for prime time. And so then that sparks some other discussions.
You got it. I mean, imagine that your team bakes bread. I mean, we all pretty much know what you need in bread, right? You got the yeast, you got the flour, blah, blah, blah. And if you're me, you might sneak a little sugar in there, right? More than you need to. But anyway, until the team sits down and says, well, what's the kind of bread we like to bake? The ingredients that are special to us. And I'm talking now about our thinking and action that are important to us as a team. Now it's moving from simply reading a recipe card to watching one of those incredible chefs, on the reality TV where you're in the kitchen with them and you're seeing them get messy and that recipe comes to life. That's what teams who are succeeding today are doing. They're starting first with their interpretation of what their values and action look like, and then they're going out and doing the work.
And so then I imagine then you could sort of spell that out in some detail in terms of, well, hey, what we call good here for this recipe, whether it's, I'm thinking like a proposal, is that it is free of factual errors and typos, and it works within the confines of the style guide, and it uses, active voice and speaks to the customer's, key needs and tells our story as it relates to. So I imagine then you can spell that out with a fair bit of detail and then let people run with it.
Yep. And what I'm going to add to your list there, Pete, you just nailed some big things. What I'm going to add to it, though, that is really key. It's the human component. Because again, if I keep showing up for work day after day after day after day after day, and I don't get to become a better human being, then I'm going to do exactly what the research is telling us is happening. I'm going to disengage. I'm going to stop making the contributor decision. I'm going to stop activating the best in others, and the heck with those people in the other functions. And so we have to ask ourselves as team members, am I a better person because I'm on this team? And if the answer to that is I'm not sure, then you can predict that our performance is going to be marginal. And so this is about equipping teams with the ability to be real, be honest, and say, for us to be better people as a result of being on this team, how do we need to think and act with each other?
Okay. Well, and then I'm imagining that you're going to need to revisit this frequently and kind of check in and observe behaviors and all that. Any best practices for the ongoing execution?
Yeah, I love that because, it's so funny. We as human beings, when we do big things, when we have big successes, and I've asked hundreds of people this question, how many great teams have you been on? Pete, I've never heard anybody say more than 5. The average is between 2 and 3. That's an entire career, 30 plus years. That's wrong. And so what we found is that people can look in hindsight, they can say, yeah, I was on this one team and everybody had everybody's backs, and then another team will say, you know what, we just were all in. And so what this is all about is saying, why wait till the end and cross our fingers to see if those human dynamics come to fruition? Let's do that at the beginning. Let's actually say, hey, do we want to be a great team? And if so, let's leverage the experience we've had on others and simply say what existed there that we want to make sure we do from the start here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Well, Craig, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we shift gears and hear about some of your favorite things.
Pete, I think that your message to the world is really, really important. And I mean this because there's this connection. When I'm awesome at my job, I love my job.
Right.
And what I love about that is because it goes both ways. When I love my job, then I become more awesome at it. It goes both ways. And I'm telling you what, there is a movement afoot where that word, we're working with some organization, working with a company in Minnesota. I'm going to respect your confidentiality, but I'm telling you what, it's one of the fastest growing franchises around the world. And their corporate value is love. I mean, this was about human beings being real. And so I just love what you're doing, Pete, in the sense that, hey, let's bring that energy, and it goes both ways. I'm going to bring my energy of caring, because then I'm going to show up differently, and vice versa.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, now, Craig, tell me about a favorite quote, something you find inspiring.
Well, I just did, right? I mean, you just, it's your work. Right now I'm studying and doing a lot of reading with this, about the Stoics. And I think about Seneca. I think about, some of the early thinkers. And then I'm fascinated by how their thought process, which is really deeply rooted in, we own our response to everything that happens to us. And we talk about this in our Do Big Things framework. It's the essence behind exercising your barrier breaking authority. And when we do that, we of course function more with our heart, and then that opens up the mind. So long answer, one of my favorite quotes is, you open up the mind when you open up the heart. And that's the Dalai Lama in action. All right. Thank you. And now, how about a favorite book? Oh, I got many. And I will deny my ego by by answering any of our own books here. I'm also reading a book. This is along the lines of the Stoic, and I'm embarrassed because I'm going to forget his name. So maybe my teammate can Google real quick. The Obstacle is the Way. I think that's Ryan Holiday. Thank you. Just wrapped up his book for the second time. And that's a lot of the study of the Stoics and so forth. That's a fabulous book. I'm a big fan of Daniel Goleman, and so his book Focus, which we actually cite a fair amount of his research in our work, really is profound in influencing how the brain is working. And then what we're doing, of course, is let's make that super practical. Sitting next to him, Daniel Kahneman, and his profoundly important book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is really, really fascinating, because so often once we understand what the brain is doing, then we can manage it better. We can use it to our advantage versus our disadvantage. And if you'll indulge me, I'm also a fan of Peter Senge and some of his classic work like The Fifth Discipline, and how much that brings in the human component. Some beautiful work. Thanks for asking that. Oh, yeah, thank you. And how about a favorite tool? Well, now I am going to be biased. I'm going to be biased. We talked about on this episode, the energy map really has been profound. And there are 25 years of work. Every place we've worked around the world, that's every continent, essentially, every industry, people overwhelmingly come back and say they love the energy map because it allows them to do two things: identify where their focus is and where they need it to be in order to be more fulfilled and do bigger things in life and as a team. So the answer would be the energy map. Okay. And how about a favorite habit? Yeah, that is probably right now for me is mindfulness, practicing mindfulness. And so just in 2017, I practiced meditation throughout my adult life, but I don't think I got really disciplined, and I wanted to make it a habit in 2000. And so I think I'm just about there. It's a habit. I'm doing it at different points throughout the day. And again, when you study, Daniel Goleman, a lot of the work that's out there, and there's a lot of great work, the practice of mindfulness and being able to control our focus. So, I love that saying, and I've researched, I don't know who said it originally, so maybe someone can help us, but instead of thoughts having us, we're having thoughts. And so the habit of being more effective in that pursuit has been one I'm grateful for. Oh, thank you. And how about a particular nugget, a piece that you share that really gets people, resonating, nodding their heads and taking notes? Yeah, it is this, that changing behaviors is not an intellectual exercise. It's the business of the heart. All too often, while people want to live and lead from their heart, they're attempting to change their behaviors and the behaviors of others by persuading them with statistics, persuading them with, stories are effective. But the stories that are effective are the ones that open the heart. They're the ones that tap into a deeper emotion, that tap into and leverage and allow people to live from their values. And so it would be that, Pete, that changing behaviors is not an intellectual exercise, it's the business of the heart. All right.
And Craig, if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where would you point them?
Yeah, Verus Global, VERUS Global.com. That's a fabulous resource. And we've got plenty of not just written material, but also a whole library of videos on different topics. And of course, our books and resources are there as well. And can also follow me on LinkedIn, Craig Ross, and Twitter and so forth. And quite frankly, Pete, I invite everybody here, Craig at verusglobal.com. Is an email address that they can communicate with me personally on, and I enjoy the discussions.
Okay. And Craig, do you have a final challenge or call to action you'd issue to folks seeking to be awesome at their jobs?
You got it. Just 10% more. Just 10% more. It's not about going out and doing something that you've never done before. It's doing what you know is right. Just 10% more as a teammate. And that would be the closing remark is, what is your most important role in team? Your most important role is being the best teammates you can be. We have a functional responsibility, but we have accountability to our team's objective. And that's the call to action.
All right. Well, Craig, thank you so much for taking this time and sharing your perspectives. So enriching and valuable. And I just hope that you and Verus Global keep on doing what you're doing, big things in big ways with more folks. It's great stuff.
Pete, thank you. And thank you for your important work.
I really dug the whole concept of the energy map that Craig shared there, because I think so often we don't even stop to check in to see where are we investing our time and what is the relative balance of that investment of time in the conversation. And we can really fall for some loops where we're really going in circles and not putting it in some sensible places. So I thought that was a handy tool to surface some of those loops and get ahead of them. So I hope you dug that as well. And again, if you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we referenced, it's at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP205. And I hope you'll stick around for our next episode. It is a mother-daughter combo. Elizabeth and Lisa McLeod are talking about managing yourself effectively and bringing good career developments from that. So I hope to catch you there. Peace.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. To get the most out of this conversation, visit awesomeatyourjob.com to find today's show notes, transcript, and infographic summary cheat sheet. For more entertaining professional skill sharpening, be sure to subscribe to catch the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.